And it's a pleasure to be here. For all you lovely nurses and health professionals, you're all very special people, I know, from my experience. And I know you've probably got lots of patient stories yourself, so thanks for listening to my little story. Look, I'll start with my sister. In 2000, she just fainted at work one day. She fell over. You know, she was, how old was she then? 24. And no reason, Mum took her to the hospital. I was living in Brisbane with my husband and kids at the time, and Mum was like, Nadi's fainted, we're taking her to the hospital. Probably about 2 hours later, they came back and said, oh, she's got cancer. Mum fell off the bed, you know, nothing, no indication, no symptoms, nothing. She just collapsed one day of being tired and lethargic. So her journey began there. She was 24. She had a GIST, which was at that stage in the year 2001. We were told it was an extremely rare cancer. There wasn't the genetic testing available back then for us to sort of explore further. Chemotherapy wasn't an option for her, radiation wasn't an option, so she had surgery. She had it here at RPA, and I was talking to Kate before, who's I think dashed off now, but Dr. Story did her surgery at the time and removed a big tumour from her abdomen. Things were going okay, she was recovering well and got married, you know, sort of starting to live the life of a young woman, and she's just sort of had it hanging over her head that she wanted to start a family pretty quickly. So they started IVF, and she fell pregnant pretty much straight away. And 6 months after having her little girl Olivia, she became very ill again and died about a month later from the GIST. So we were all very close, sheltered family. Nothing like this had happened. Mum and Dad were childhood sweethearts, had 4 girls, very normal life. And we were heartbroken, of course, shell-shocked. We had her little daughter, Olivia, who was 6 months old. Her husband was 30, a young man in his prime, lonely. You know, it all starts. It's all those human emotions and stories that happen. 2 years later, my mum was diagnosed with a secondary liver cancer. Never found out where the primary came from. Again, at that time, there was no genetic testings, but we were all like, oh, this is just weird. What's going on here? What's wrong with our family? What's in the water where we've grown up? What's happening? You know, Mum had no symptoms. She actually just said to me one day, I thought I had a urinary tract infection. That was the only thing she felt different. Her and Dad had been looking after Nadi's little girl Olivia, and she was about 2 at this stage. And so Mum had surgery to remove the tumour on her liver, and followed by chemo and lots of other medications, and she died about 6 months after that. So that was just obviously, you know, devastating to us all. My dad was, you know, all of a sudden a family of 6, and, you know, he'd lost his childhood sweetheart and his youngest daughter. So anyway, as you do, you soldier on through life and you get on. Everyone has their own lives to live, and I have 3 children of my own, so, you know, we were continuing on. Yeah, and we sort of, our family in Sydney here, and our children have all grown up. Our youngest had finished his HSC, took a bit of a gap year, and then decided to move to Melbourne with his girlfriend, be a bit of a hipster, go to uni down there, do arts. Not that he really did that at all, he'd just sit in the coffee shops all day. But yeah, you know, every time we'd go down and visit him, he'd come back and he's looking skinnier, you know. I'm thinking, it's that 2-minute noodle diet that you're on, you know, you $5 a week budget. But anyway, I thought nothing of it because he's always been healthy, never any problems with his health ever. And one time he came in semester break and he said to me, Mum, I've got this really funny lump here. And I said, lie on the floor and show me. And it was huge. It was like, because he's a fit, gorgeous looking kid. Any young girls out there? He's gorgeous. And, you know, he's got abs, and he laid down. It was like this extra ab that he had that was bulging out. And I was like, holy hell, that is not right. We're going to the doctor tomorrow. So the GP immediately gave us a referral for an ultrasound. We took him there, so I was there in half an hour. We're going to get on top of this. And about an hour later, I thought, I've had 3 kids. Ultrasounds don't take an hour. What the hell's going on? And they came out and they said, look, we're having trouble finding what this is. We're going to do a CT scan. So I thought, okay, all right, do what you've got to do. And when Charlie came out with the radiographer, he just said, he shook his hand and said, good luck, mate. And I just felt, that was just a bit alarming to a mum, at that time Charlie was 20, young man himself. I wasn't to know all his business and private confidentiality and all that. So then it all began for my son. We went to the doctor back that afternoon who had got the results, and he said, it looks like you've got a tumour in your abdomen, Charlie. So he referred us to a soft tissue surgeon because we had no idea at this stage that there was any familial connection at all. So Charlie had surgery. They took out a tumour that was about 15 by 12 centimetres in his abdomen, like the size of a small footy. He's got this gorgeous scar from here to here, lots of bio oil on that one. He was really sick in hospital for a while because he had like an obstructed bowel after the surgery. So he was about 5 weeks in hospital, got down to about 48 kilos, really skinny, gaunt looking. And that sort of reminded me of my sister and my mum because they sort of deteriorated that way. That's hard to see. But the nurses, just amazing, of course, in the ward, just kept everything for Charlie, as best as they could and comfortable as they could. Anyway, his bowel, he had a second surgery, that's right, and everything sort of wiggled back the way it should, and probably a week after he was discharged from hospital. And since then, because of the staining from his tumour, the surgeon said, look, you might want to get some genetic testing. This looks like a tumour that could be what's called a paraganglioma. Couldn't even pronounce that then. I'm pretty good at saying it now. So we started down the genetic counselling track, and we saw a genetic counsellor, and we were told, okay, what Charlie has either come from mum's or dad's side, 50-50 chance. And I'm just starting to think, my sister, my mum, my son, it's got to be me. So I said to my husband, I'll do the testing first to see if I carry the faulty gene, as we call it. And it came back, of course, that I do carry the faulty gene, the SDHB, which my children and myself, we call the sunny days, happy something or other. They've labelled it something. So, yes, that was me going, okay, from my maternal side, probably because of my mum and my sister. All my other sisters got tested, my dad got tested, my aunties got tested, everyone who was connected, obviously to our family, was tested. And Dad was negative, so that told us that it has come from the maternal side of my family. And then we started thinking, wow, Mum grew up in a small country town. Her mum died when she was 15, and they don't know why. They don't have any records from, back in the 40s, in a small little town. But my auntie and my mum do know that it had something to do with her stomach. They used to say she used to take too many Bex powders back then or something, but we don't know what my grandmother died of when Mum was 15. But it all started to just seem a little bit, oh, wow, this is, our life has just sort of gone all of a sudden. So given that we have 2 daughters, they had the genetic testing as well, and we were told there's a 50-50 chance, that, one of your children will have this, or I can't even remember the statistics now, but anyway, long story short, both of our girls carry the faulty gene as well. So our 3 children have it. So I just had this massive, oh hell, that's my fault. I'm their mum, while they were in my tummy. But obviously that's not the case, as we know now. And our genetic counsellor actually put it so beautifully. She said, Cindy, it actually wasn't your fault. Your husband had 50% to do with this and he couldn't stop it. So we're blaming him. So yeah, that's how we've found out about, you know, the genetic faulty gene that now all my children carry. My girls don't have any tumours or symptoms. We're screened regularly. We see a fabulous endocrinologist, Professor Rory Clifton-Bly, and I see a few smiles there. Do you know Rory? Yeah, he's just lovely. So my son and I see him every 6 months, and Charlie has regular PET scans. He has now metastasised bone cancer, so he has about 12 tumours in his skull, arms, legs, abdomen, chest, spine. That's a pretty horrible thing to see on a screen when you're a mum, see all these specs, even though, like, he's 24 now, so, you know, he's still my baby. But yeah, it's just a matter of screening him now and watching him and hoping he doesn't break any bones. He's given up skateboarding, so that's good. I have a tumour at the base of my skull and one in my neck at the right that are again being monitored. I wouldn't have known, apart from, you know, we just, if ever I'm at the pub with my son, I say, right, it's my shout, we owe you a beer. He's gone through all this pain and hell. Because, yeah, without sort of that genetic testing, we would have, like, I wouldn't know, my girls wouldn't know. And the safe and warm thing that I feel is that they have a heads up. My sister didn't have that. Like, if we had have known, she was 28 when she died, you know, a little 6-month-old baby, and it just wasn't a thing then. But now we do know, and we've been told, you know, Cindy, if your children decide to have their own children, there are options to actually cut out that faulty gene and stop the disease. So that'll be interesting. I don't think any of my children are planning on having children, so who knows. Yeah, so that's sort of a very brief story. I could go on, I'm sorry, but it's sort of probably very brief. I don't think I have much else to add about the story as such. Have I missed something?
I don't think you have.
Okay.
You've been sharing the depth of how this has affected your family, and we're very deeply grateful for you sharing this story so that we can see the impact of the genetic mutations and hear about how you and your family feel about the options that we have now of the genetic counselling and testing. And I just wondered if you've caught your breath, if you wanted to briefly touch on how that communicating to your wider family, how that's been for you and the family.
Yeah, I think because of the history of my sister and my mum, it was a no-brainer. It was like, you know, come on guys, these are the connections you've got to make. Here's the information. Go and get the blood test, have the testing. My sisters have all got kids. One of them's got 3 grandkids. You know, there's potential for it to have affected all of them. Thankfully, none of them have it. It's just me, so I'm a bit, you know, I'm sort of a bit cranky with my sisters sometimes. In a nice way, sisters can be, you know. But, thankfully, it doesn't affect their lives, but they were absolutely, yes, there was no questions about it. We were a pretty close family, and my auntie, who was my mum's only living relative, she has 5 children of her own and grandchildren, so potentially it could have affected them as well. Thankfully it hasn't, so the buck stops with us. Yeah.
Well, Cindy, what you and your family are experiencing is most profound, and you know, it takes us back to our very core as families, and so to hear this, you share your story and how it's affected you is super, very generous of you, of heart, mind and soul, and we thank you for that. I wanted to just touch on one thing that you kindly shared with me the other day when you were expressing your gratitude at the advances that we have in the genetic testing now, and what is available, which you have touched on. It was a really profound point for me that these advances you felt were something good for your family to
absolutely, yes.
experience in this sea of confronting health issues.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge is wisdom, and thank you for gaining this further knowledge for your own selves and to share with your patients and everyone, and
we're all here for the graciousness of you and your family and consumers and patients like yourselves. So thank you for sharing your story, a very deeply moving story, and we wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you.
As much as possible with your beautiful names for your genetic variation.
Yes,
you'd like to share it with us. And
we actually call it the club. My husband's not in the club. Me and my children were in the club. He's out of it. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure.
Thank you,
Cindy. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I will. I'd like to say.
That was absolutely fantastic, Cindy.
Oh,
So
well.
thank you so much. But you
Pleasure.
actually explained penetrance very well.
Uh-huh.
So the fact that you had all those relatives, that nobody was affected until later, explains the fact that in SDHB, only 30% of people, if you look at large populations, will have disease, which makes it really hard to get the history, which is why now everyone who gets a GIST has staining for SDHB,
Right, yeah.
and everyone who has a big paraganglioma.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But those sort of things feel it's normal to feel really angry. Like if only I had this before my son, if only we'd known about it earlier, and that's totally normal.
Yeah.
So I guess
it's the what ifs in life, isn't it? Yeah.
And I guess that's what we're all learning through your experiences. But what we're trying to do with the SDH is to try and find out what makes somebody get it and somebody not. Is there something else that we could do to try and determine who's not at risk and who is at risk? Because your daughters might go through the whole of their life and never have anything.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Hopefully.
Anyhow, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes.
Just thank you very much.
No, thank you.
And it really has helped us.
Thank you very much, everybody.
So everyone, keep your calls going, and I would just like to thank Cindy for sharing her family story with us and bringing a human experience to it. So
I'm not a professional, as you can see.
thank you so much. So everyone, thank you for coming tonight.